Welcome to WikiPodcast.
Today we're embarking on a truly immersive journey, a deep dive into the ancient Maya faith.
We'll explore their intricate web of beliefs, the powerful rituals that shape their lives, and their fascinating cyclical understanding of time and destiny.
What can we learn from this ancient worldview? That's our mission today.
Okay, so to even begin to grasp the Mayan faith, where do we start? What sources do we actually have?
Well, it's quite a mix, actually. We have the Maya's own writings, the codices, the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and the Grolier Codex, which is still debated by some.
Direct glimpses.
Exactly. And then there's what some call the Ceramic Codex, the narratives painted right onto pottery, plus murals, stone inscriptions.
And it's not just their own stuff, is it? We also rely on later accounts.
Absolutely. Early colonial texts are crucial things like the Popol Vuh, the ritual of the Macabres. Indispensable, really.
And Spanish accounts, too, from when they first arrived.
Yes, though you have to read those with, a critical eye. But they offer perspectives. Then there's archaeology, of course, the physical evidence.
And anthropology, looking at continuing traditions.
Right. It's like piecing together this huge puzzle from fragments scattered across time and different viewpoints.
So our goal today is to sort of weave these threads together.
Precisely. To understand the core beliefs, get a feel for that cyclical time concept, which is so different from ours, and touch on, well, the big themes like blood, the cosmos.
Okay, so looking at those sources, one thing that jumps out is this idea that Maya religion wasn't maybe like a formal church structure. We saw the term costumber.
Ah, yes, costumber. It means custom, basically. But in this context, it signifies something deeper.
How so?
It shows how religious practice was just woven into daily life. It wasn't necessarily about strict dogma, but about these ingrained traditions, these essential customs.
And the village priest, the J-man.
His title literally means practitioner. It highlights that role.
Yeah.
He's the one who carries out the customs, keeps the traditions going.
So spirituality wasn't just in temples then, it was out in the world.
Very much so. The idea of a sacred landscape is fundamental.
Mountains, caves.
Mountains, wells, caves, cenotes, these weren't just geographical features. They were spiritually charged, linked to specific ancestors, specific deities.
Like living geography.
You could say that. Think of the Tzotzil towns in Akantan. Even their bathing places are seen as sacred, tied to ancestral guardians. It's that integrated.
Wow. And this ties into their calendar system too, right? Mapping time onto the landscape.
Yes, exactly. Their complex calendars weren't just abstract, they were projected onto the land.
How did that work in practice?
Well, like in modern Quichean Momostenango, you see certain day names and numbers from the calendar corresponding to specific shrines out in the mountains.
So the calendar told them where and when to perform rituals.
Precisely. It's this amazing fusion of time, space, and sacred action.
And they traveled for rituals too? Pilgrimages?
Oh, absolutely. Pilgrimages were vital. They connected communities, transcended local boundaries.
Famous sites like Chichen Itza.
Chichen Itza and its cenote, definitely.
Yeah.
But also older sites like the Naj-Tunaj cave system where nobles left inscriptions.
And this continues today.
It does. Pilgrimages to venerate village saints, journeys to sacred mountains. The tradition persists.
Okay, so when they perform these rituals, offerings and sacrifices were key. It sounds incredibly detailed.
Meticulous is the word. The items themselves, specific maize breads, cacao drinks, honey liquor, incense, rubber figures, even cigars.
Not just thrown together.
Not at all. The preparation, the quantities, like that example of exactly 415 grains of maize for a New Year ritual, the arrangement, it all followed strict rules.
And the purpose.
It was about establishing and, crucially, renewing relationships with the other world, with the spirits, the deities.
And it wasn't just food or incense. Sacrifice could involve animals and sometimes humans.
Yes. Animal sacrifice, deer, dogs, quail, turkeys, fish was relatively common.
Mm-hmm.
Human sacrifice was much rarer, reserved for exceptional circumstances.
Like what?
Major state events, perhaps times of crisis, maybe royal successions. There's this idea of a sacrificed child acting as a substitute, which is complex.
And bloodletting too.
Right, self-sacrifice. High officials, even royalty, would perform bloodletting using things like stingray spines, a deeply symbolic act, plus the careful burial of offertory caches.
It all points to a need for purity, for being right with the spirit world. Did they have purification rituals?
Absolutely essential. Before major rituals, you'd have periods of fasting, sexual abstinence, bathing, even forms of confession.
To prepare themselves?
Yes, to cleanse, to exorcise potentially harmful influences, and just to be ready to enter sacred space or interact with the divine. Even small acts could be purifying.
And prayer would accompany these actions.
Often, yes. My prayer could take the form of these long, rhythmic litanies.
What would they invoke?
Oh, everything. Personified days from the calendar, saints later on, obviously landscape features, specific mountains, deities.
And there were specialists.
Yes. Prayer makers in the highlands are a good example. Their prayers often have this distinctive structure, these parallel couplets you see in older texts, too.
So who were these specialists, the priests, the guides for all this?
Well, traditional Maya society had a hierarchy of religious figures. They led prayers, performed sacrifices.
And this structure survived colonization.
In many ways, yes, often by integrating with Catholic brotherhoods or the civil religious hierarchy. It's quite fascinating how some pre-Spanish roles were preserved that way.
Like the diviners, the daykeepers.
Yeah, exactly. The Akin, the daykeepers who interpret the sacred calendar, were crucial. And healers, too, addressing spiritual and physical ills. Our knowledge of the earlier priesthood comes a lot from those early Spanish accounts.
It sounds quite serious, but I understand there was also performance drama involved in their
Oh,
rituals.
definitely. Feasts were major events, often including dramatic performances. Deities might be impersonated,
By
sometimes by the king himself. These feasts were often sponsored by wealthy individuals, important for community bonding. Communal drinking was also, part of it.
So not just solemn rituals, but celebrations with music, dance.
Yes, the more complex rituals involved music, dancing, processions, even theatrical plays. We know about specific dances for New Year rituals, like the Shibal Okot, the dance of the underworld.
And gods associated with feasting.
The tonsured maize god is often shown dancing, a real patron of feasting and abundance.
And this impersonation idea seems significant across Mesoamerica, right?
Very much so. Impersonating deities, animals, even those spirit companions, the way of Wada. It wasn't just acting. It was embodying that power.
Was there humor involved?
Yes, ritual humor definitely had its place, and you see powerful examples of royal impersonation on stele.
Like the king wearing masks.
Exactly. The king wearing the headdress or mask of Cheyak, the rain god, or an aquatic serpent. It visually linked him to divine power. The queen often represented the maize goddess.
So it wasn't just the king.
No, sometimes young men would impersonate figures like the Bacabs, the sky bearers, or Cheyak's helpers.
Let's shift to that concept of time again. The calendar seems absolutely fundamental.
Utterly. You can't understand Maya ritual without understanding their calendar. It was tied directly to networks of shrines.
The 260-day cycle, the 365-day year.
Right, and the crucial year bearers, those 4 days that could begin the year. They were seen as divine lords who carried the year's destiny.
And they were worshipped.
Yes, welcomed and worshipped on specific mountains designated for them. It shows that deep landscape connection again.
What about the end of the year, that 5-day period?
The Yoyab, a very significant kind of dangerous transitional time.
What happened then?
Well, they'd make this straw puppet figure, the grandfather, representing the old year. And there were ceremonies to install the patron deity of the incoming year. It's all about that cycle, death, and renewal.
And projecting the year bearers onto the town itself.
Yeah, linking the temporal cycle to the spatial organization of the community. It's incredibly layered. And then you have the longer cycles, like the Katun, the 20-year period.
Seen as a divine lord, too.
As a divine king, yes. Each Katun had its own prophecies and character.
It sounds like math and timekeeping were almost religious sciences.
They really were. Arithmetic, calendrics, these were priestly domains. Numbers themselves were divine. The day unit, kin, was deified.
Is that where the howler monkey gods come in?
Yes, they were patrons of scribes and diviners, the keepers of this knowledge. The numbers 13 and 20 are just fundamental everywhere.
So this complex calendar was used for divination, to understand destiny.
Absolutely. The 260-day Solkan calendar was the main tool. By looking at the combination of the 20-day names and 13 numbers, you could interpret the energy of a day.
For guidance in life.
For guidance on everything, when to plant, marry, travel, conduct ceremonies, offer sacrifices at specific number shrines. The days themselves were divine lordships.
And the word for priest, Akin.
Means he of the days, the counter of days. Shows how central it was.
How did they actually divine?
Various techniques. throwing seeds or crystals, scrying, gazing into mirrors or bowls of water, trying to read the patterns, interpret the signs.
And what about the stars? Astronomy or astrology?
Well, they were brilliant astronomers, keen observers, but their goal was primarily astrological,
Meaning,
meaning they believed celestial movements, the sun, moon, planets, stars, directly influenced earthly events.
for farming and hunting.
Yes, observing signs for agriculture, hunting, predicting illnesses. We know many star names, but tracing specific astrological predictions beyond agriculture is harder.
Except in the codices.
Right. The Dresden Codex is remarkable. It has tables for predicting lunar and solar eclipses, tracking the cycle of Venus, incredibly sophisticated astrology.
A zodiac.
Possibly. The Paris Codex might depict a zodiac, though it's debated. And classic inscriptions mention Star Wars, suggesting celestial events were linked to warfare.
So they saw this intricate connection between time, the heavens, and life on Earth. How did they picture the cosmos itself, the world?
They generally saw the Earth as flat, maybe square or circular. Above it, a layered sky, often 13 layers. Below, the underworld is Xibalba, sometimes described with 9 layers, though not always explicitly.
And connecting them.
The Great World Tree, the Yaksha or Ceiba tree, its roots in the underworld, trunk on Earth, branches reaching the heavens. A cosmic axis.
Like the maize tree in Palenque.
Exactly. Sometimes maize represented the central life-sustaining tree. Earth and sky were often depicted as giant serpents or dragons.
Held apart.
By deities, the Bacabs, often placed at the 4 corners, holding up the sky. The king himself was often associated with this central world tree or mountain.
Do they have stories about the world ending and beginning?
Oh yes. Cyclical creation and destruction is a key theme. Post-classic texts, like the books of Chilombalum, talk about the sky collapsing, a great flood.
And then a recreation.
Yes. The world trees being set up again, order restored, often involving deities like Bolon-Zakab and the Bacabs. The Popol Vuh focuses more on successive attempts at creating humans, ending in floods.
And the classic period, that long count date.
The famous 4 Ahoate Kumku base date definitely marks a creation event for them. It seems linked to the maize god's mythology, maybe the paddler gods setting up the cosmic hearth, those 3 stones.
What about the individual? The soul?
They seem to have believed in multiple soul components: breath, shadow, blood, bone. Soul loss was a cause of illness.
And the way up.
The coessence, right, the way or wayab. An animal counterpart, or sometimes a natural phenomenon like lightning linked to a person, usually male nobles or kings. A protector, a spirit self, maybe even something they could transform into.
And after death, what happened then?
Beliefs might have varied. Some sources mention Xibalba, the underworld, as the destination, maybe a place of trials like for the hero twins.
Any concept of paradise?
Possibly. Yucatec sources mention Metnal, a place of torment for evildoers, but also a paradise, maybe ruled by the goddess Ixtab, for others.
And ancestors.
Ancestors were hugely important, sometimes depicted sprouting like fruit trees from the earth, suggesting rebirth. The Flower Mountain idea might represent an aquatic or solar paradise, maybe linked to the rain god's realm.
So the ancestors were powerful forces.
Absolutely. Seen as constantly present, often dwelling in mountains, receiving offerings. Genealogical memory, knowing your lineage, was vital, especially for the elite.
Like the first ancestors in the Popol Vuh.
Exactly, coming from the mythical 7 caves. Ancestral deities and sacred bundles containing lineage power were important in the classic period too.
And heroes were part of this.
Yes, a special category of ancestor. The most famous are the hero twins Hunahpu and Xbalanque from the Popol Vuh. Their story was known way back in the classic period, seen on pottery and monuments.
Then there are the deities themselves. How did the Maya think about their gods?
The concept Ku, or Chu, or Kabuvil, it's more than just personified nature. Deities had specific roles, jobs related to human activities, patrons of occupations, towns.
Like the 4 gods of Itzamkanak.
It's a good example. And scholars use classifications like the Schellhas-Zimmermann-Taub system for codex deities based on their attributes: creator gods, sky gods, weather gods, death gods.
It's a huge pantheon.
Very diverse. You have major figures like Itzana, the creator, Chak, the rain god, Kinech Ahal, the sun god, the maize god, death gods like Puch, the hero twins, of course.
What about Kukulkan?
Interestingly, Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, prominent in the post-classic, isn't a major figure in the codices. And some key classic deities, like an ocean god or certain jaguar gods, also don't appear much in the surviving codices.
And Kawel.
Kawil, the lightning god, often shown with a smoking axe or torch in his forehead. He's almost omnipresent in classic iconography, linked to royalty and divine power.
And this blends with Catholicism later, syncretism.
Yes. In modern Maya folk religion, you see fascinating blends, with Catholic saints taking on aspects of traditional deities or the idea of owners or dueños of mountains, forests, animals.
Speaking of animals, they seem more than just beasts in Maya thought.
Definitely. Animal persons, they have a kind of autonomy, mirroring human society, playing social roles. Think of the Popol Vuh, the peccary and coati healers, the owl messengers.
War on the ceramics?
Right. The ceramic codex shows howler monkey scribes and artists, animals playing instruments in processions. They had ritual roles, too.
But not all spirits were benevolent. There were darker entities.
Oh, yes. Contrasted with the legitimate power of gods and ancestors, you had spooks, apparitions, demons, things that cause fear and harm.
Like the sextabe.
The extabe, the female ensnarer, is a famous Yucatec example. Tzotzil lore has many specific spooks and devourer demons. And the ancient bird demon, Vucub from the Popol Vuh.
And bush spirits.
Things like the Salvaje. They inhabit wild places, but aren't quite apparitions in the same way. More like wild counterparts to humans.
What about goblins and dwarfs?
The Yucatec Alexab are goblins, sometimes created by priests to help farmers guard their fields. Dwarfs and hunchbacks often appear in classic art.
Associated with what?
Often linked to mythical primordial times, maybe before the current creation or connected to the flood. They frequently appear with the king or the maize god, sometimes with aquatic features.
Like the rain god's helpers.
Possibly. Some scholars link them to figures like the Tlalocue in central Mexico, assistants to the rain god. They're intriguing figures.
It's just an incredibly rich, complex world they inhabited.
It truly is. Dynamic, interconnected. Time wasn't a straight line. The cosmos was alive. And that relationship between people and the sacred was maintained through constant, intricate, meaningful action.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us into the Mayan faith.
We hope this exploration has offered you maybe a glimpse into their rich spiritual world.
Their profound connection to the cosmos and their unique way of understanding time.
The sources really do reveal a complex and evolving belief system. It continues to fascinate, continues to inspire.
It really does. It shows just how differently humans can perceive reality and their place within it.
Indeed. A powerful reminder of the diversity of human spiritual expression.
Thanks for listening. Write us in the comments your opinion on the deep dive and what other topics you would like us to explore. Subscribe to the channel to help us reach more listeners. Thank you and have an amazing day.